I turned 30 last month. No calls, no texts, not even a lousy Facebook post from my family. Not that I expected balloons, or a cake, or anything. I haven't had that since I was maybe 14, but when you hit the big 3-0, you kinda expect at least one person who shares your DNA to say something. Anything. Instead, the only thing I got was a tagged Instagram photo of my brother popping champagne in a suit that didn't fit him right, surrounded by my parents, our cousins, and even my aunt who never shows up unless someone's dying. The caption? "So proud of you, Darren. Our future executive." It wasn't even his post. It was Mom's. "I'm Nathan, by the way. Just Nate. Unless you're my mom and you're mad at me for something stupid like forgetting to RSVP to Christmas dinner, even though I was never invited. I work in tech. Not the flashy influencer kind of tech, but the behind-the-scenes, late-night debugging, high-stakes deals kind. I don't talk about it much, because honestly, nobody in my family ever really asks. Or listens when I try. I've been the quiet one since forever. The kid who brought books to family reunions, who stayed in his room while Darren hosted pool parties downstairs. I used to think that if I just kept my head down and did well, they'd eventually notice. Turns out, all it did was make me invisible. The thing about Darren is, he's loud, charismatic. He walks into a room and immediately makes it about him. And people love that. They eat it up. Especially our parents. I can't count the number of times I've watched him fail upward. Like when he dropped out of college after 2 years and somehow spun it into a strategic pivot to work in marketing. Or when he got fired from his job at that startup and Mom told everyone he left to pursue bigger opportunities. I swear, if Darren tripped and fell face first into a sewer, Dad would say he was scouting real estate for a luxury underground bar. So when I saw the picture of the champagne and the poorly fitted suit and the entire family clapping like trained seals, I knew something big must have happened. And sure enough, I found out later that day, not from them, of course, but through a colleague. Darren had just been offered a junior exec position at a major partner company. The same company my team recently finalized an acquisition deal with. A company whose new hiring strategy one personally reviewed. A company where, thanks to a recent merger, I now sit on the internal hiring board. I knew his resume when I saw it. Knew the puffed-up language, the exaggerated accomplishments, the creative formatting. But I let it slide. Approved it, even. Not because I believed in him. I didn't. But because I thought, maybe this would finally be the thing that got him on his feet. Maybe if he had something real, he'd stop sucking attention out of every room like a vacuum. But then came my birthday. Or rather, the lack of one. I had taken the day off. Ordered in some good food, put on an old movie I loved as a kid, The Iron Giant, if you're curious, and told myself I didn't care if nobody called. Around 4 p.m., I broke and checked my phone. Still nothing. But right there at the top of my feed was a story from my cousin Emily. Darren standing in front of a banner that said, "Congrats, Darren," in Comic Sans, holding a glass of scotch like he was some kind of Wolf of Wall Street knockoff. My parents were on either side of him, beaming. There were streamers. Balloons. My mom had made her famous lemon cake, the one she only brings out for special occasions. I watched them all take turns giving toasts, laughing, clinking glasses. My aunt even got emotional and called him the pride of the family. I sat there, alone in my apartment, with lukewarm takeout and a movie that now just made me feel like a lonely kid again. And yeah, I'll admit it, it hurt. More than I thought it would. I hadn't cried on my birthday in years, but that night I did. Just a little. Quietly. Angry tears, mostly. Not because I wanted a party, but because they couldn't be bothered to remember I existed. Because the only time I'm ever mentioned in that house is when someone needs help with a router or to brag about how their other son works in Silicon Valley. Later that night, I texted my mom. Just, "Hey, saw the celebration. Hope it went well." She replied 2 hours later with, "Oh, sorry, sweetie. We meant to invite you, but figured you'd be too busy. You're always so busy these days." I didn't respond. What was the point? But here's where things start to get interesting. Because a week later, Darren called me. No, hey bro, no small talk. Just straight to the point. "So, I heard you're on the hiring board now. At Nexa?" I could hear the hesitation in his voice. The way he tried to sound casual, but couldn't quite pull it off. "Yeah," I said slowly, already guessing where this was going. "Well, you might have seen my offer letter come through. Just wanted to say thanks for the green light, man. I know we don't talk much, but I appreciate it." I wanted to say something. To ask him why he didn't think to invite me to the party. why he hadn't said a word about my birthday. But I bit my tongue. Sure, I said. Congrats. He laughed. Yeah, it's kind of a big deal. I mean, not everyone gets that kind of offer. Maybe if you were more successful, the family would have shown up for you too. I don't know what he expected me to do. Laugh with him. Be grateful that he called me at all. What he didn't know, what nobody knew, was that the offer hadn't been finalized yet. There were still 2 sign-offs required. One from HR, and one from me. And after that comment, I just sat there for a moment, holding the phone, staring at the wall as his words repeated in my head. More successful. The irony of it made my stomach twist. He had no idea who signed his offer. No idea I could still pull it. No idea that the next time he walked into that office with his overpriced cologne and his LinkedIn buzzwords, there'd be no desk waiting for him. But I didn't say anything. Not yet. I just smiled and said, "Good luck, Darren." And then I started making a few quiet calls. The thing about silent resentment is that it builds slowly, like sediment at the bottom of a river. You don't always notice it until the water turns murky. That call with Darren, that was the first ripple. After that, it was like everything I'd ever brushed off. Every slight, every backhanded compliment, every time I was made to feel like a footnote in my own family, started rising to the surface. I didn't pull the offer. Not immediately. I told myself I needed time to think, to be sure I wasn't just acting out of pettiness. But the truth? I wanted to see if anyone else would say something. If my mom would realize they'd missed my birthday and call to apologize. If Darren would text a sheepish "my bad" and try to pass it off as a joke gone wrong. If Dad, who rarely talks unless it's about the weather or stocks, would even acknowledge what had happened. But nothing came. A few days after the call, I got a group text from my mom. Family dinner next Saturday to celebrate Darren's big step forward. Hope everyone can make it. Everyone. She still hadn't even sent me a private message about my birthday. I stared at it for a long time. No mention of the dinner being optional or casual. No asking if I was free. Just a blanket assumption that we'd all show up and clap for Darren like always. Like it was our job. I didn't reply. The next day, my Aunt Lisa called me. She's the only one in the family who's ever really treated me like a person instead of a backup generator for when Darren's ego ran low. She teaches high school English, lives 2 towns over, and has this uncanny ability to sense when something's wrong. "I saw your mom's message," she said, skipping the small talk entirely. "You okay?" "Peachy," I muttered, just figuring out how to wrap a golden pedestal in gift paper. She snorted. "That bad, huh?" I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. "I can skip it," she offered. "We could do something else. Just the 2 of us." "No, go." "Really?" I said, even though I meant the opposite. "Don't make it a thing." "You sure?" "I'm used to it," I replied. And I was. But that didn't make it easier. When the day came, I didn't go to the dinner. Instead, I spent the evening reorganizing my bookshelf, which sounds boring, but something about alphabetizing my chaos helped me feel in control. Around 9 p.m., my phone buzzed. A picture from my cousin Emily again. Darren holding up a gold-framed certificate that said Future VP in big letters. Mom had printed it out herself, probably at her office, like it was some kind of homemade diploma. They were all there again. The cousins. The aunts. Even Grandma June, who hasn't left her house in a year unless there's a wedding or someone's dying. She was sitting at the head of the table, smiling at Darren like he'd just cured cancer. I watched the video clips in silence. At one point, someone handed Darren a mic speech. "Speech," they chanted. He stood, glass in hand, and smiled like he was already practicing for TED Talks. I just want to say this job is going to be the start of something big. Not just for me, but for the whole family. And you know, I've always said this, success doesn't happen alone. It takes support, belief, encouragement. He paused dramatically. And thankfully, I've always had that here. With all of you. My biggest fans. There was applause. A few whoops. I felt something in my chest tighten like a vice. He didn't thank me. Didn't even mention me. The next morning, my mom called. I let it ring out the first time. Then again. On the 3rd try, I picked up. "Hey, sweetie," she said, too cheery. "We missed you last night." "Yeah," I said. "I saw." She laughed like I was joking. It was such a great night. Darren gave the sweetest speech. He's really matured, hasn't he? I didn't answer. She filled the silence with more updates. What Aunt Miriam wore, how the lemon cake turned out, how Grandma June even stayed past 10. Eventually, she landed on her real reason for calling. "By the way, Darren mentioned you might have had something to do with his job offer? I raised an eyebrow. Might have. Well, he said you work with that company or something. You never really explain your job, so I wasn't sure. Right. Because the years of explaining what a product manager does apparently never sank in. I sit on the hiring board, I said flatly. I approved his application. There was a pause. A long one. Oh, she said finally. Well, isn't that nice? So thoughtful of you. See, you do support your brother. That should have been the moment she thanked me. Acknowledged my role. But instead, she sounded like I'd bought him a coffee. And I guess that means you're doing pretty well too, huh? She added, almost like an afterthought. Maybe one day you'll get promoted to executive too. I stared at the phone. That vice in my chest twisted again. Yeah, I said. Maybe one day. I hung up not long after. The next week, the favoritism reached new heights. Mom started posting old photos of Darren as a kid on Facebook. Our little leader in the making, with captions about how proud she was. Dad shared a LinkedIn post Darren had written, or probably copied, about rising through adversity and chasing dreams. Even Grandma June sent out a handwritten note to the extended family, talking about how Darren was carrying the family legacy forward. Legacy? Meanwhile, I hadn't even gotten a text about the quarterly update I helped oversee, a project that saved our parent company millions. Not that I expected my family to care about cloud infrastructure migration, but a well done might have been nice. Then came the betrayal. I got a call from HR. Hey Nate, just a heads up, said Melissa, our HR manager. We've got a weird situation with one of the junior exec offers. My stomach tightened. Which one? Darren Sullivan. Your cousin, right? Brother. Right. Well, it seems he's already updated his LinkedIn with the title and company. Says he's incoming VP of strategy, which isn't even the role he was offered. And he's been contacting team leads directly, trying to get a head start. We've had 3 managers complain already. I close my eyes. It hasn't even been finalized. Exactly. The background check is still pending, and we haven't received his signed NDA. And he's calling himself VP? Yep. And reaching out to people above his level like he's running the place. One manager said he referred to them as his future subordinates. I didn't say anything for a while. Nate, do we need to be worried? She asked gently. I took a breath. No, not anymore. After I hung up, I sat in silence. The weight of everything pressing down on me like a boulder. That was it. The moment I realized it wasn't just harmless favoritism anymore. It wasn't just being the forgotten son, the backup, the afterthought. This was someone using my name, my position, to inflate himself while disrespecting the very people who made it possible. He didn't care. None of them did. And suddenly, the silence I'd always tried to maintain didn't feel noble anymore. It felt complicit. I opened my laptop. I pulled up the internal portal, and I stared at the offer status. Pending. 2 buttons below. Approve. Rescind. I didn't click anything yet, because first, I had one more thing I needed to do. I picked up my phone and called Darren. He picked up on the second ring, sounding smug as ever. Hey bro, what's up? Finally calling to congratulate me. Something like that, I said. He chuckled. You see all the love online? It's wild, man. People are already messaging me about potential partnerships. Feels good to finally be where I belong, you know? I didn't respond. He kept going. Honestly, I owe you, bro. Without that green light, none of this would have happened. So thanks. Really, even if you didn't come to the dinner. You mean the one on my birthday? There was a pause, just long enough for the guilt to surface, if he had any. Right, he said finally. About that. I mean, come on, man. You know how it is. We figured you were busy. And besides, you don't really do birthdays. I clenched my jaw. You don't get to decide that. Another pause. Then, all right, relax. Don't get all emotional. It's not that deep. I took a breath, but it came out shaky. It is, I said. It's deeper than you think. He laughed again. Well, you're the successful one, right? All big and mysterious in tech. Guess this is what it takes for people to finally look at me the way they look at you. And there it was. The truth, finally peeking through the cracks. I ended the call with just one word. Goodbye. And then I hovered over the button. Not the final one. Not yet. Because this wasn't just about pulling a job offer. This was about something deeper. Something they'd never see coming. Something I'd been quietly planning since the first time I realized I wasn't invisible, just underestimated. And when I finally clicked, it wouldn't be just Darren who felt it. It would be the whole family. But first, I had one more card to play. One more quiet move before the real revenge began. One they'd never expect. Not from the quiet son, the backup, the ghost in the corner of the photo frame. I smiled and began to write the email. The thing about hitting rock bottom is that nobody ever tells you how quiet it is. There's no dramatic music, no slow-motion montage of you staring out a rainy window with a glass of whiskey in your hand. No cathartic scream in the woods. Just silence. And the low hum of your refrigerator at 3 a.m. as you sit alone on your kitchen floor, trying to piece together how a birthday, your birthday, turned into a breaking point for everything. I didn't send the email that night. I wrote it, edited it, rewrote it 5 times. But I didn't send it. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in years. I took a walk. It was just past midnight, and the streets were mostly empty. A few cars rolled by. Somewhere in the distance, someone was playing old R&B too loud through half-blown speakers. I pulled my jacket tighter and walked without a destination. I needed to get out of that apartment. Out of my head. I passed a small coffee shop, closed, but the lights inside were on. Probably cleaning staff. The sign said, "Open mic Thursdays." I smiled a little. Once upon a time, I used to write poetry. Back in college. Bad poetry mostly. The kind you only admit to when you're a bottle of wine deep and someone pulls out an acoustic guitar. But still, it was a part of me. A part I'd buried under meetings, deadlines, and a carefully curated professional life. I kept walking. Eventually, I ended up at a park bench by the lake. Sat there until my fingers went numb. I must have looked pathetic, grown man in a dress shirt and coat, staring at water like it had answers. But that night, I didn't feel angry. I felt small. Not in a self-pitying way. Just reduced. Like all the noise, the expectations, the resentment, it had all been stripped away. And what was left was the simple, aching question I hadn't let myself ask in years. Why wasn't I enough for them? Not good enough to be celebrated. Not loud enough to be heard. Not proud enough of myself to stop waiting for their permission to feel proud. That question lingered for days. I didn't tell anyone what was going on. Not my coworkers, not my friends, not even Aunt Lisa. I went to work, sat in meetings, signed documents, gave feedback on prototypes, smiled politely at Darren's name in our internal dashboard, still marked as pending offer. And then something shifted. It started small. During a strategy meeting, our CEO, Marcus, a sharp but surprisingly kind guy with a habit of doodling on whiteboards mid-sentence, asked a question about a potential acquisition target. Anyone familiar with their back-end operations? I was. I'd done a personal audit weeks ago, just out of curiosity. So I raised my hand. Actually, yeah. Their data pipelines are brittle, patched together with third-party scripts. They're scaling too fast for the infrastructure they've built. It'll collapse in 2 years unless someone reinvents their base. Everyone looked at me. I wasn't used to that. Interesting, Marcus said. You free to lead due diligence? I nodded. Good. You're on point. That moment came and went. No applause, no parade. But something about it stuck with me. Someone had seen me. Not as a backup. Not as Darren's brother. Not as a mysterious tech guy. Just me. Capable. Sharp. Quiet. But not invisible. In the following weeks, I took the lead on 2 more projects. I was promoted to senior strategy lead in a meeting so casual, I almost didn't realize it was happening until I saw the email confirmation. Suddenly, people were asking for my input. Not out of obligation, but respect. Outside of work, I started to do things for myself again. Little things, like picking up a secondhand piano keyboard from Facebook Marketplace. I used to play as a kid, until Darren accidentally spilled soda into the keys and my parents never replaced it. This one had a few sticky notes from the previous owner, chords scribbled on them, smiley faces and Sharpie. I like that. Some nights, I'd play for hours. Just me and the keys, making up melodies that nobody would hear. I also started going to that coffee shop, the one with the open mic. I never read anything, not yet, but I'd sit in the back and sip bad coffee while strangers poured their hearts out. Some were terrible, some were brilliant. All of them were brave. That inspired me. So I opened a blank document and started writing again. Not poetry this time, just thoughts, journal entries, fragments of memories I hadn't thought about in years. Like the time I won first place in the state science fair and Mom said, "That's nice, but Darren's soccer team made playoffs." And we all went to Olive Garden to celebrate that instead. I wrote about the year I paid off my student loans in silence while Darren asked Mom and Dad for another small loan to cover his entrepreneurial endeavors. They gave it to him, of course. I wrote until I couldn't feel my fingers. And slowly, something inside me began to heal. I wasn't angry anymore. Not in the same way. The pain was still there, sure, the kind that leaves a permanent bruise you forget about until someone presses down too hard. But it wasn't running me anymore. Then, one night, I got a message. From Emily, my cousin, the one always recording videos and tagging people in champagne toasts. Hey, I know things have been weird lately. Just wanted to say I saw what Darren posted earlier, and yeah, that was messed up. You okay? I blinked. Darren. I opened LinkedIn, and there it was. A post from Darren's profile, now updated with our company name, complete with the title, Incoming VP of Strategic Innovation. The post was long, too long, filled with vague buzzwords about growth, gratitude, and earning your seat at the table. But the part that hit hardest was the last line. I did this on my own. No handouts. Just grit. Handouts. My hands hovered over the keyboard. I started typing, angry, fiery responses. I deleted them all. Instead, I wrote, glad to see you're doing well. Hope you've also had time to finish the NDA and the onboarding steps. Let me know if you need help navigating our background check. I hear some exaggerations don't play well with compliance. I didn't send it. I just smiled. The next morning, I walked into HR. Melissa greeted me with a sigh. You saw the post? Yep. You still want to go through with it? I nodded. It's not just about the post. It's the pattern. She didn't ask more. She just pulled up the offer, rescinded it, and logged it in the system. I thanked her. Then I walked back to my desk, opened a new doc, and titled it, Legacy Isn't Given. Not for work. For me. A personal manifesto, maybe. Or the first essay in something bigger. A story not about revenge, not exactly, but about reclamation. About remembering who I am without the shadow of someone louder constantly looming over me. About the quiet kid in the corner who finally decided to stop asking for permission to be seen. But even then, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady. And then, that afternoon, the storm hit. An unexpected knock on my apartment door, followed by a voice I hadn't heard in weeks. Nate, open up. We need to talk. Now. I didn't move. But I heard him. Darren. And he did not sound calm. I took a deep breath, cracked my knuckles, and opened the door. He stood in the hallway, his hand frozen midair like he hadn't expected me to actually open the door. His face was red, not just from the cold. There was a crease between his eyebrows I hadn't seen since he got caught using my homework in high school. That same dumb, panicked look. Nate, he said, voice low but tense, what the did you do? I leaned against the doorframe and didn't answer. Just studied him. Same overpriced haircut. Same cologne trying to mask the sourness of desperation. The illusion of control clinging to him like a cheap suit 2 sizes too tight. He glanced down the hallway, then stepped in without being invited. You rescinded my offer. It wasn't a question. I shut the door behind him. Slowly. And you came here because I need you to fix it, he snapped. Then, catching himself, he added, look, I don't know what the issue is, but this isn't just some entry-level job, man. This was a career move. You don't get to just yank that away. I raised an eyebrow. I don't. No, he snapped. You don't. He said it like it was obvious. Like I was the one breaking the rules. Okay, I said calmly. Let's go over a few things then. You lied about your job title online before the position was confirmed. You exaggerated your credentials. You bypassed protocol and started contacting senior staff like you were their superior. You violated onboarding policies and exposed the company to compliance risks. And you did it all with the arrogance of someone who genuinely thought they were untouchable. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. You embarrassed me, I added, voice flat. At work, with my team. And then you doubled down and acted like I owed you. That's not how I meant it, he said quickly, stepping forward. I was just excited. I got carried away. Excited. I repeated. You said, and I quote, maybe if I were more successful, the family would show up for me. Then you called the job something it wasn't and strutted around like you earned it. He looked away. You didn't even thank me. I did. I called you. You mocked me, Darren. You took a swing and didn't even notice it landed. Silence. For a second, I thought he'd finally get it. That some flicker of humility might appear. But no. You seriously can't be doing this right now, he said, voice rising. Do you know how hard I've worked to get people to take me seriously? How many bridges I've built just to be seen as more than some failure? This job was my redemption, Nate. My turning point. I stared at him. Redemption built on a lie isn't redemption. It's branding. He flinched like I'd slapped him. But then he scoffed and threw his hands up. You've always hated me. Admit it. Ever since we were kids. I let out a breath. I don't hate you, Darren. I just stopped cleaning up after you. He stared at me for a moment, then turned toward the door. But before he opened it, he muttered under his breath, they're still gonna choose me. They always do. I didn't answer, because he wasn't wrong. Not yet. But I was about to change that. After he left, I sat in the dark for a long time. And for the first time in years, I felt something new, clarity. This wasn't just about Darren anymore. It wasn't just about a birthday or a job offer or being the family afterthought. It was about a lifetime of being made to feel smaller so he could feel bigger. It was about silence being mistaken for weakness. About how no matter what I built, they'd always assume Darren's cardboard castle was a mansion and my steel fortress was just a shed. I opened my laptop, and I started laying the groundwork. Phase 1, the email trail. I forwarded the official rescind notice to Darren's professional email, the one he used to apply, with a note. Hi, Darren. As per the final review from HR and legal, the offer has been formally rescinded due to non-compliance and premature public disclosures. Best of luck in your future endeavors. Nate. Polite. Professional. Cold. But that wasn't the important part. The important part was that I BCC'd my parents. I wanted them to see it. To know exactly what happened and how. No room for Darren to spin a sob story about evil corporate backstabbing. Just the facts. Phase 2, the files. I collected screenshots, LinkedIn posts, text messages, emails where Darren had overstepped his bounds and bragged about titles he didn't hold. Internal complaints from team leads. Notes from HR. All neatly organized into a folder labeled Integrity Review. I didn't plan to leak it, but I wanted it ready, just in case. Phase 3, the talk. I called Aunt Lisa. She answered on the first ring. I was wondering when you'd reach out. You heard? Darren's been texting everyone like a man on fire. Says you ruined his life. Did I? He didn't say what he did, just that you were jealous. I laughed bitterly. Right. Lisa paused. You want to come over this weekend? I made that lasagna you like. And I think it's time we talked about the family. So I did. It was the first family visit in months that didn't end with me feeling invisible. Lisa told me stories I didn't know, about the way Mom always talked about me like an asterisk, even when I won awards or made Dean's List. About how Darren had always played the victim, and how the rest of the family just let him. They're not evil, she said, but they're lazy, emotionally lazy, and you were easy to ignore because you didn't scream. I nodded. I'm done being quiet, I said. Phase 4, the setup. Now that I had the truth, the proof, and the perspective, all I needed was an opportunity. It came in the form of an invitation. From my mother. A group email titled, Family Brunch, Let's Talk Speech Balloon. The body read, Hi everyone. There's been a bit of tension lately, and I think it's time we cleared the air. Let's meet this Sunday for brunch at our place. Just as family. No drama, no yelling, just honest conversation. Looking forward to seeing everyone. Love. Mom. No mention of Darren. No mention of the offer. But I knew what it was. An ambush. Or a plea. Either way, it was perfect. I RSVP'd. I'll be there. And then I went shopping. Not for clothes. For documents. I had an old manila folder in my desk. Hadn't touched it in years. Inside were printed versions of my college scholarships, award letters, performance reviews, promotion memos. Proof of everything I'd ever done while the family was busy clapping for Darren's participation trophies. I added the screenshots, too. Printed them all. Stapled them neatly. Slid them into the folder. Then I printed one more page. A short letter. Just a few paragraphs. Addressed to my parents. I folded it once and placed it on top. When Sunday came, I showed up on time. Darren was already there, slouched on the couch like he owned the place, phone in hand, fake smile plastered on. My parents were bustling around the kitchen, overcompensating with 2 mini croissants and nervous energy. Lisa gave me a quick squeeze on the arm. Emily mouthed, You good? From across the room. I nodded. I was ready. Okay. Mom said finally, wiping her hands. Let's sit. We gathered around the dining table. Plates. Coffee. Tension so thick you could chew it. Dad cleared his throat. So, I think we've all got some things to say. I waited. Let them talk first. Darren launched into a speech, something about betrayal, professionalism, family values. He sprinkled in just enough self-pity to look like a victim without outright blaming me. He was good. He always was. When he finished, all eyes turned to me, and I reached into my bag, pulled out the folder, placed it in the center of the table. "What's this?" Mom asked, already frowning. "My side," I said, "since nobody ever asks for it." And I let them open it. Let them read. Let the silence swallow the room as the truth spread out before them, page by page. But that wasn't the end. Not even close. Because tucked inside the folder, behind the letter, was something else entirely. Something none of them saw coming. And it would change everything. Forever. The silence that followed was so complete, I could hear the fridge humming from the other room. Nobody moved. Nobody blinked. The weight of the truth, printed out and plain as daylight, pressed against the table like a second centerpiece. Darren was the first to break. "What is this crap?" he muttered, flipping through the stack with growing panic. His eyes darted across the pages, screenshots of his LinkedIn post, internal HR flags, emails he'd sent boasting about his executive status, his name next to complaint reports from managers he'd cold called. "You've been collecting this?" "No," I said coolly. "This all happened in the last 3 weeks." Mom picked up a performance review, mine, from last quarter. The comments were glowing. There were hand-scribbled notes from the CEO, even a signed commendation letter for my work during a high-stakes transition deal. She didn't look at me. She just said, softly, "You never told us about this." I didn't respond, because that was the point. For 30 years, I'd waited to be asked. Now they could read it in silence. Darren shoved the folder aside and stood up. "So what, Nate? You wanted to humiliate me? You're that jealous." I looked at him calmly. "I didn't bring this to humiliate you. I brought it to end the story you keep rewriting." He scoffed. "Please. You just want to prove you're better." "No," I said. "I already know I am." That line made him freeze. For once, there was no smirk. Just that quiet, stunned fury that shows up when someone's carefully constructed version of themselves starts to crack. My father cleared his throat. "I think this is getting a little." "No," I interrupted. "You're going to sit there and listen." For once. He stopped mid-breath. That alone felt like a miracle. I reached into the folder one last time and pulled out the letter I'd written. I unfolded it slowly, the way people do in courtrooms or movies. But this wasn't for drama. It was for me. I read it aloud, not because I needed to, but because I wanted them to hear every word. To Mom and Dad, this isn't a rant. This isn't revenge. This is a resignation. For years, I've worked hard, stayed quiet, and told myself that if I was just a little more successful, a little more patient, a little more perfect, you'd see me. You'd be proud of me. You'd celebrate me the way you do, Darren. But that moment never came. I've come to accept something. It's not that you don't love me. It's that you don't value me in the way I need to be valued. And that's okay. I can't control that. But I can control what I allow to continue. I'm stepping back. I'm done playing second to someone who hasn't earned first. I'm done shrinking to make space for someone louder. I'm done hoping for applause from people who didn't notice I was performing. I'm not cutting you off, but I'm cutting off the version of me who kept waiting for your approval. He's gone, and I like who's replacing him. Nate. When I finished, I folded it again and placed it in front of them. The silence that followed wasn't angry. It wasn't cold. It was stunned. Hollow. The sound of a house of cards collapsing in slow motion. Mom wiped her cheek. I wasn't sure if it was a tear or just nervous habit. Dad looked down at the table like it might explain something he missed 20 years ago. But Darren did what Darren always did. He lashed out. "This is pathetic," he muttered. "You think this makes you look strong? You just burned your own family down over a job." I looked at him. Really looked at him. "Do you know what the difference is between us?" I asked, voice low. He blinked. "What?" "I build things quietly. You take credit loudly. I fix what you break. You brag about holding the pieces. And when people finally see the difference, you call it jealousy." He opened his mouth. "Don't," I said. "You had your turn. Now it's mine." And then I dropped the final piece. "By the way," I added, "you didn't just lose the offer. You've been flagged." His face drained. "What?" "The hiring board marked your file. Not just for exaggeration, but for ethical red flags. You'll have a hard time applying anywhere that shares our background portal." "You're lying." I shrugged. "Email them." He turned to our parents. Are you seriously going to let him ruin my life? My mom looked at him, really looked, and for once, I saw it click. You ruined your own offer, Darren, she said quietly. Nate just stopped protecting you. That shut him up. He stormed out a minute later, slamming the door behind him. Nobody followed. I didn't stay much longer, just long enough to say goodbye to Aunt Lisa, who squeezed my hand under the table and whispered, that was overdue. And as I walked out, I left the folder behind. Let them sit with it. Let them finally read the story they'd ignored for 30 years. In the weeks that followed, things changed. Darren tried to spin the fallout into a redemption arc, again. Claimed he was starting fresh, building his own path, and rejecting corporate corruption. But it didn't land. Word got out. He burned bridges he didn't even know existed. One by one, opportunities closed like doors in a storm. My parents tried to reconnect. They called, sent texts. Just checking in, they'd write. Hope you're doing well. Sometimes I replied. Usually I didn't. Not out of spite. Out of peace. Because I wasn't chasing their attention anymore. I was free of it. Work took off. I was promoted again 6 months later. Led 2 major integrations. Got a bonus that let me buy a lakeside cabin I'd been eyeing for years. A quiet retreat, just for me. I started writing again. Real writing. Essays, articles, reflections on tech and identity, and what it means to rebuild yourself from scratch. One of them went viral. A few platforms reached out. I started thinking maybe, just maybe, I'd publish something for real. A year later, I hosted a birthday party at the cabin. Small, close friends. Aunt Lisa, Emily, a few people from work. We had wine, homemade pizza, and a dumb trivia contest that got way too competitive. Someone asked, what was the best decision you made in your 30s? I smiled, and I said, choosing myself. They didn't get it, but I did, and that was enough.